Here we have the first cover-up in Christian history. This is what you must say. His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we are asleep. Notice that the soldiers themselves were troubled, and they were not asleep. The truth is, they saw what happened. They were terrified. I believe, sure, there's a reference to that in one of the Gospels, that they were terrified. It must have been an event of cosmic proportions. So it had to be hushed up. These cover-ups are by now familiar. They've happened also in the context of people who were trying to silence heaven in, for instance, situations of events that shouldn't really be happening, for instance, in wartime. Do you know that this was said in the context of the Second World War amongst the Germans themselves? An instruction was given: there will be no miracle of the Marne. Now, that is a reference to the cover-up that happened on the German side in the First World War. Apparently what happened is this: strict orders had been given on the German side that nothing of this was to be spoken about or mentioned or leaked out in any means whatsoever. It's relevant in this week because of what has just happened in Paris. It would seem that Our Lady, who precisely watches over Paris, as the name given to her cathedral suggests, was in some way concerned about that beautiful city where there was a visible and ancient devotion to her. Well, at a certain point it would seem that Paris was in serious danger, and she intervened. Now, this is in the First World War, and she is known to have appeared in the sky, and with regard to the French themselves, she was making this gesture that they were not to go back any further. And in parallel, she was making to the German side this sign: thus far and no further. And it was a turning point referred to in France as le miracle de la Marne. It was an intervention from on high, but it was not to be talked about. Of course, the fact that that prohibition was on the German side didn't impede it leaking out on the French side, even though a huge number was slaughtered. There are other also interventions in wartime. I've heard within my own family about the angels of Mons, these strange beings seen by the troops in the trenches, and only on Mons in Welsh. Dad knew about it, and it was transmitted. And we have one written testimony of a soldier, an eyewitness, authenticating it was true. He had just seen it. Now, it is not surprising when one thinks about it, because what's going on in these situations? It's relevant at this time of year. It's relevant in the first reading, where precisely St. Peter talks directly about the fact that David was dead and his tomb is with them. When there is a close proximity between life and death, multiplied actually many times over in a war situation, Heaven is very concerned. At every death, heaven is extremely concerned. The angels can see the danger and are aware of demonic presences. A fight, a cosmic fight for each soul. Multiply that by a war field and you can see how there's bound to be a huge interest both in heaven and in hell. Each soldier killed by each bullet and shell, all the stuff that's going across his trenches, all this is going to lead to a judgment in each case which will have eternal consequences. With regard to also what we need to be aware of, it is something that we can examine on the level of the planet, a kind of cover-up of hard truths. It is not politically correct to talk about, for instance, demonic intervention within religions, or to talk about untruth or false religions. But the fact is this: if there is a force that wishes the harm of the immortal soul, that force is bound to wish harm to the means of saving it. Therefore, that force will do everything within its angelic power to attack, damage, destroy and dismantle what is founded by the Son of God, and which is starting to be precisely in this sermon. Diffusion of the gospel around the world, the founding of the church. Peter, remember, is the preacher here. Well, what will he do? He will look for anything and everything which will impede the diffusion of grace, and it will also lead physically, spiritually, directly and indirectly to an attack, the dismantling of the Catholic Church itself. So what do we have? Immediately in the Acts of the Apostles, and then into the first 3 centuries, attack from without, attack upon attack. Every pope, until Pope Liberius was canonized, he was not, and it was therefore identified with being a Christian, being ready for martyrdom. So then we have another stage. It wasn't successful. On the contrary, another means had to be found. That diffusion, which went as far as North Africa, producing saints like Augustine and a whole spirituality, based on Latin actually, great authors, this was the very one that would be attacked in that continent by a strange power. Nothing is more powerful as a driving force than a religion. Question mark. Which angel appeared to the founder of the religion in question? He said it was Gabriel. Now that Gabriel is the one that we find at the beginning of the Gospel. We find him coming to our Blessed Lady. It would seem he was also talking to Zachariah. He was one of the brightest creatures, which is interesting. Lucifer had been the brightest creature, the brightest angel, hence his fall, cosmic in nature. But there's an old saying in Latin, in Roman law, is fecit cui prodest. He did it, to whom it serves. And so, is it not likely that the father of lies would find some way of taking in a person who would be a means of destroying the means of grace instituted by the Lord himself? The truth cannot be divided. The Lord is not divided. Either a faith is true or it is not. One cannot have bits of truth and untruth intermingled. It doesn't work. Only the Catholic Church was founded by him, and only the Catholic Church has the fullness of truth. Why? Because the Lord identifies himself with it. So, what will happen? He will try initially from without, persecution after persecution, and then, of course, being Lucifer with a brilliant angelic mind, he will try in the last resort to do what was not possible until our time, destroy it from within. And here he would need the collaboration of precisely those within. So we have to do with precisely a modern form of covering up. Cover up. Cover up. So we need what? Eyes to see, a mind to discern, that mind which is given to us by the Holy Spirit. Calmly, serenely see that all that we hear is not necessarily the truth, but men who are interested in hiding things will find other ways of presenting it. Let's be wise. Jesus is our teacher. The only thing that we can rely on serenely and calmly is what has always been taught, defended by the Holy Spirit, and which does not depend on this one or that one. The truth, we know it by instinct. We have the sense of the faithful. Massively, the Catholic Church knows, sort of, without putting it into words, the truth is such and cannot be such. Calmly, let us listen within to that voice of the Spirit and be wise enough not to be taken up by huge, massive, subtle